It's so nice to have an entourage. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mudikwa Oriolua, but you can call me Mo. Let me just make sure I can actually change my slides. I'm an immigrant American from Nigeria, and as I'm sure many of you know, growing up between two cultures, two national identities shapes you. I still remember acclimating to the suburbs of Atlanta where I grew up and trying to make sense of why the world outside of our new windows was so different from the world my family and I had just left. This curiosity has defined me. Through Decrit, I was introduced to architect Rem Koolhaas. Oh, why is it still? Oh, there we go. Through Decrit, I was introduced to architect Rem Koolhaas's research for Harvard's Project on the City, where he explored Lagos, Nigeria, a place my family calls home. Koolhaas and a team of researchers, including Nigerian architect Kunle Adeyemi, identified and contextualized the systems that underlie life in one of Africa's most populous megacities. This offered grounding context for me, that it is possible to identify a system of culture that shows identity as a living and breathing thing. This built-on knowledge gained in undergrad, where I learned how the vernacular architecture of San Francisco Chinatown was directly shaped by local Chinese-American businessmen trying to mediate tensions and hostilities between the Chinese-American community and white residents who viewed their neighbors with a malicious lens. A leading businessman at the time commissioned a group of white architects to design a commerce hub that could appeal to the tourist gaze and disarm racist projections. The design mandate? To design a building in the style of beautiful artistic fantasies of the Far East. This building is a living example of how cultural identity is mediated through design, and here, architecture is a site of compromise for a community of immigrants just seeking dignity. So in my research, I inquire, how do you define and design cultural identity? How do you spatialize and locate it? I went looking for this question with the intent to study museums and ornamental architecture, but meanwhile, every day, I walked past places that looked like this. In immigrant communities around New York City, instead of overly curated institutional exhibitions, I found what I call naturally occurring galleries that provide windows into how identity is being mediated through daily commerce, advertising, and communication design, all through the ephemera that exists on storefronts, bulletin boards, and lampposts around the city. I found visual organizations that depart from Western communication design hierarchies, bright colors that symbolize flags and auspicious values, often on letter or poster-sized paper. While ephemera describes material with the intent to dispose, I was greatly impressed by what is possible with tape and how these materials function as a vernacular visual culture that spatializes the presence and locality of a culture. In my research, I observed how storefront ephemera are streetscape signifiers of cultural identity. So my inquiry is to look into what we can and can't learn from the storefront, and in a political climate that fosters state-sponsored violence against immigrant communities through the Department of Homeland Security, I wanted to understand how the audacity to choose to build a life in a new country could be represented through the act and art of informal everyday matter, taped to windows and lampposts, tucked into corners, competing for attention while also existing as the background artifact of everyday life. In Brooklyn's Little Caribbean and Queens' Little India and Little Bangladesh, I witnessed palimpsests of paper that show the spatialization of communities through temporal layers. Note the placement of posters sharing space with regulatory signage, often tiled next to each other as tessellations. Here, a concert poster is suspended on display long after the event has taken place, its presence signifying an ongoing relevance, even as it disintegrates. That's my baby girl. Well, my niece, but still my baby. On the storefront of Patel Brothers, a national South Asian grocery chain in Jackson Heights, I came across a simple sale flyer in a shade of green that I couldn't ignore. Historically, green is used in commercial grocery advertising to signify freshness and ties to agriculture. I grew curious about the typeface used here, annoyingly curious. I found that it's one called Tavern S Bold, which is a modern version of the typeface Algerian, which was created in the early 20th century by an English foundry called Stevenson Blake to evoke the calligraphy seen in signage in southern Spain and North Africa. It is a typeface that embodies the colonial history between the two regions. Here, on this flyer, The typeface is deployed as a communication device to foster a commercial transaction within a community that would have also been subject to the same Oriental context. This reveals how even our cultural notions of self-representation are interwoven with the colonial gaze. This is an example of what French theorist Louis Althusser's concept of interpolation, which is a way of seeing and identifying oneself through the eyes and vocabulary of others, and specifically those in power. It also points to the ways in which cultural identity does not evolve nor exist in a vacuum, but evolves dynamically in response to trade, migration, and globalization histories. As immigrants migrate across borders, we take with us notions and assumptions of identity to pass down to new generations, who negotiate this identity with their new home cultures that they come in contact with. I witnessed this negotiation on the storefront of a local Chinese restaurant in the Bangladeshi majority neighborhood where I live, with a flyer for an event honoring New York's Bangladeshi diaspora. It connected them to a 2024 student-led movement in Bangladesh that led to the ousting and exile of a corrupt prime minister. Sumaya, the event's host and designer of the flyer, shared with me that her inspiration came from the graffiti and visual culture of the protests. She says, "I knew that I wanted to take my inspiration from the uprising graffiti. I wasn't interested in representing the flag of Bangladesh, which is green and red, but I did see the red semicircle with the green, slim green border as a subtle reference to those colors. That wasn't my intent because I'm not interested in promoting nationalism." Sumaya is not a professional designer. She's a writer and lawyer, and she's quite fabulous. But she displayed a design intent to weave in parts of herself, her identity as the daughter of Bangladeshi immigrants, and as someone mediating a connection to the current events tied to her heritage. She included pink and green, which are colors she treasures personally, and styled and named the event after the idea of a new dawn for Bangladesh, which is a phrase that Bangladesh's interim leader used to describe the new era for the country following the social revolution. Indeed, the visual signifier of dawn is used near synonymously to represent new beginnings. It is often seen and deployed within social revolutions throughout history, represented with bold geometric diagonals and in hues of red that evoke both the sun and the shedding of blood. And in the global cultural imagination, New York holds a near mythological promise that people in search of a new home can find their new beginning here. Pick up my papers. Because of this popular association, the Statue of Liberty was a thematic visual reference that I came across often in symbolism. Wendy Prudencio, who is the vice president of a nonprofit called NICE, which helps immigrants access work opportunities and legal status services, and she confirmed the monument's significance. She says, members love the Statue of Liberty and what it means for them. NICE, which stands for New Immigrant Community Empowerment, serves a population that includes long-term residents, naturalized U.S. citizens, and recently arrived migrants. On their front door, a wayfinding guide helps immigrants seeking resources navigate their way to the distribution of offices around Jackson Heights. Because of the federally sanctioned actions of Immigration's Customs Enforcement, many immigrant groups must navigate their visibility and vulnerability with caution, slipping in and out of view. The usage of a temporary adhesive like tape on posters and flyers serves as a reminder that communication can be displayed with a low barrier of entry during a time of high stakes. I wanted to understand more about why the immigrant groups that NICE serves still risk coming to the U.S., knowing the current anti-immigrant national federal landscape. Wendy, who is also the daughter of immigrants who fled a civil war in Central America, told me, especially for folks who are newer to the country, the American dream is really what they hold on to. And when I meet folks, they're still so very hopeful, even though the Trump administration has made a lot of people scared. The concept of the American dream is a value deeply interwoven with this country's national identity. It's a mythological covenant that here, hard work and patriotic loyalty secures prosperity. This comes alive in the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream in Washington, D.C., which I call MCAD, and it's funded by a billionaire whose conviction for securities fraud was pardoned by President Trump. In the center, I found myself disoriented by an elegantly curated wall of Americana ephemera that exhibits images from pivotal moments in America's history. It features diverse representation, pop culture winks, and pro-war propaganda alike. But where the MCAD wall features carefully composed ephemera serving a singular agenda that advances nationalism and capitalism, The organic, informal galleries of ephemera I found in neighborhoods like Jackson Heights represent the diverging and converging narratives of an evolving people. From protest stickers to stop the Uyghur genocide, to a reappearance of that same concert series poster from earlier, this is a tapestry being constructed by many weavers, each staking their claim to this land. In Manhattan Chinatown, I found the ongoing negotiation of immigrant visibility and vulnerability with the Storefront for Ideas, which subverts the notion of a storefront by turning souvenirs and trinkets and ephemeral matter into opportunities to make visible issues with air quality and climate inequity that current Chinatown residents face, like a receipt that directs you to the air quality index where you typically find itemized prices. Here, we see communication design that reorients the gaze. But we can't see everything from the storefront. Immigrant populations, and therefore their communities and experiences in New York, vary in experience by race, class, caste, religion, status, you name it. In my research, I saw that the storefront can't tell us about the ways in which communities choose to not be seen. One interviewee from the Bronx's Bangladeshi enclave told me that once bustling culture hubs felt a lot quieter than it used to be, due to fears of ICE raids. In my research, I found that this choice to be visible or invisible, to display culture, challenge nationalism, and represent one's community is as vivid and ongoing as the journey I've been experiencing within myself as a Nigerian American longing to love two countries that are broken and beautiful. While walking, studying, researching, praying, and living in New York City, I found myself listening to Afrobeats as a way of feeling closer to my own culture. I've marveled at the way current artists lift the brassy horns and trumpets from the 70s of Yoruba highlife music and partner today with Black American musicians and even K-pop idols. It's similar to how my own personal Pinterest boards have become my own gallery of ephemera, looking to see how my peers are carrying our cultures across borders, generations, and genres as we navigate today's terms of globalization. It is in this direction that I plan to continue my research inquiries, understanding what exactly forms our sensibilities of taste and the vocabularies and design decisions that we use to mediate our own cultural evolutions. It is my invitation to you that you look at the lampposts and storefronts of communities that you live in and consider yourself a part of, and that you would bear witness to the evolving galleries of culture taking place all around you. Thank you.